Welcome to What Will It Tech? Kind of a fun panel right after lunch. Come on up. There's lots of seats up in the front. My name is Emily Ma. I work at Google. I'm also on the board of ReFed, and it is a pleasure to have you all here today. We're going to have 4 incredible panelists, but let me frame up this question about tech and data with food waste with a couple of starting slides. So here's me. Yes, I do have white hair, so that's how you find me. I can never rob a bank, I know that. How did I find my way as a technologist into the space? So very briefly, highly recommend dumpster diving. As Suzanne Long will invite you to eventually to Albertsons, I invite you to Google to come dig through our trash, which is what all of our engineering teams who work on food waste do. And we have been applying artificial intelligence to try to figure out what's in our trash bins for quite some time. It's a very, very hard problem, non-trivial problem. So what you see there is an example of how we segment out what is the food and then determine in the purple, that's fruit, and then in orange, that is vegetable. So just as an example of some of the things that we've played with. But along the way, it's not just about tech, right? Tech is just one part of the solution. We really got to back up and take a look at the entire supply chain. So as you may have heard in some of the main stage panels earlier today, right? From farm to fork, there's a lot of waste that happens. For those of you who have not seen the ReFed Insights engine, you can kind of take a look at how that plays out in a minute. But just to highlight here, you have the food service supply chain, which is different than the grocery supply chain. So keep that in mind as you hear from our speakers today. The ReFed's Insights engine will give you some of these numbers. There's waste all along the food value chain, and that means there's opportunity to go recover it. So today, we are very fortunate to have 4 organizations. We're going to have Fresh go first and talk about their work, starting with Albertsons in the grocery retail supply chain. Then we're going to have, spoiler alert, talk about what they're doing with CPG companies. Then we're going to have Too Good To Go talk about what Dana Gunder said this morning, which is discounting products so that it sells faster just before the expiration date, and then MetaFoodX, which is an incredible startup that's really helping food service kitchens get their act in order behind the scenes so that more food can be eaten versus sent to the compost bin, if it's lucky. So bring out all your cell phones, pull out your cell phones. I know that's a weird thing for me to ask you to do because normally I would ask you to put away your cell phones, and scan that QR code, because at the very end, what we'll do is we'll have 4 presentations, all 8 minutes each, and if you have a question, I'll be watching. Plug it into the Slido, and then upvote any questions that you're excited to hear from the panelists to give an answer for. I will be reading out the most upvoted questions at the very end so that we're efficient with this. Sound good? Okay, does everybody have the Slido now? Okay, I'll be watching, so you don't have to wait until the end to plug in your questions. Start plugging in questions now. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to share with us what he's doing with Afresh.
Thank you. I'm gonna stand here and hopefully not pace myself off the stage. Can I get the clicker, Emily?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Oh my God. Okay. So I'm Matt. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Afresh. And I'm really excited to talk to you all today about applying technology to prevent food waste and some of the lessons that we've learned along the way on how to do that well. Before I get into that, I'm going to give an overview of what we do at Afresh. And really, we started the company out of this deep conviction that fresh food was driving the future of what we eat. And this is coming off of a historical paradigm in which, I don't know. I'm like way at the end. Yeah, it's a teaser. So believe that fresh food is driving the future of what we eat, and I may have to go no slides. But at the same time, most if not all of the technology that had been built for the industry was really not built for fresh, despite the fact that consumers really want to eat fresh food. It's healthier, it's more experiential, and grocers are increasingly investing in it. And this paradigm of fresh food being so strategic, yet so underpenetrated by technology, yields things like what we see here. So these are the store ordering processes at retailers that order on the order of $500 million of produce a year, up to $10 billion of produce per year. very manual processes. You can see a lot of pen and paper and gut instincts, human intuition driving the most critical decisions that these businesses use every single day. And that in turn causes massive problems. Billions and billions of dollars of waste, of lost sales, of food that's less fresh than it could be, so lost days of shelf life, which in turn causes waste at home, labor inefficiencies, and other supply chain issues. I don't know where I'm pointing this thing. And as a result, what we've said and what we want to do is change this paradigm. So the future of what we're eating is fresh. The technology has all been built for non-fresh things. We're building fresh-first solutions that are very easily adopted into this industry that all have an aim of preventing food waste and multiplying the profitability of retailers at the same time. So what you see on the screen right here is our first solution. This is a store ordering tool, in this case in the meat department, that is leveraging artificial intelligence to create a profit-maximizing, waste-minimizing order quantity every day for every item. And this is the front-end user interface that's used by store teams to get adoption into actual grocery stores across the country. This is the first solution now in a broader suite of products that we've built, ranging from store-level ordering to also inventory management to distribution center-level ordering and more. All right, so what are some of the lessons that we've learned along the way? I think one teaser is that we're now on a run rate basis preventing about 50 million pounds of food waste per year, and we're live in 3,000 grocery stores across the US. So we've definitely had our ups and downs as we've gotten there. The first thing I'll just share is that we believe that decisions and not data is what matters. And I'll share a story to help illustrate this. When we were first starting the company out of business school, we worked really hard. We got our first grocery store pilot. So it was a regional grocery chain. They gave us their data. We worked really hard to develop a forecast, nights and weekends, building the solution. And we delivered a forecast to the grocery executive that had sponsored our program. And he promptly told us, this is worthless. There was no value in the forecast. What they really needed was to actually change their operational practices and change the behavior of people in stores that were actually ordering the product to deliver results. And so we realized at that point that it was really critically important to change operational practices and get adoption and drive better decisions and actually change the business as opposed to just providing data or analytics or insights. That segues into our second lesson, which is that it's really critical to win the hearts and minds of users. And that as much as AI is a buzzword these days, and there's actual advances in the technologies that are applied there, and we think we're at the forefront of it, it comes down to being in stores with folks like this on the picture on the right to actually make change happen. And so building software that's really thoughtfully designed for users to actually adopt it and adhere to it is really critical to actually make any impact at all. And then in addition, we spent a ton of time going into stores when we launched them to really get buy-in and excitement from the users of tools to then when we roll these things out, actually get adoption at scale. And I would just say that the food industry generally is a very labor-intensive, boots on the ground, physical, it's sometimes cold in the wee hours of the morning. Folks that work in this industry, in retail, food service, food banks, you name it, it can be a grueling job. And so if you try to apply technology into the industry without being really thoughtful about how folks are gonna actually use it, then you just won't succeed. So this is the second lesson, I would say. The third piece I would say then is that it's actually possible to make transformative change with just software. So these are pictures from a back room with before a fresh on the left-hand side and post a fresh on the right-hand side. And so what this is at the back of the grocery store, which none of us usually walk into, it's a cooler where the food is stored before it goes out onto the shelf. And through just better decision making, it's possible to completely lean out how much inventory a grocer is carrying while still having a full shelf on the floor. So you can maximize your sales, but not have a bunch of food that's losing shelf life in the back room, which in turn causes waste. And so for a lot of folks that actually want to make an impact, I think there's a fear in food waste or in sustainability generally that it's really capital intensive. And there's a lot of CapEx required to make a successful intervention. And what I would say here is that actually it's it's possible through software, albeit, of course, there's going to be some solutions that require hardware or complete revisitations of our supply chain. It's possible through applying AI using software to make transformative changes on the physical world without actually, touching it with just software. And the last lesson I have is just that it's got to make sense for the business. And so what we found is that we sell into retailers and we talk about profitability. We actually don't spend as much time talking about sustainability. And while that's kind of a shame, and I would like to spend more time talking about food waste and preventing climate emissions, we actually found that talking about the impact on the bottom line is what's most impactful. So that's all led up to us now being at a run rate of about 50 million pounds of food waste prevention and live at about 3,000 stores across the country and growing rapidly. So I'm here. Catherine from my team is also here. And feel free to shoot us a note. She's at Catherine at Afresh. I'm at Matt at Afresh, and excited to take your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. So we have Victoria next from Spoiler Alert. And a quick note for those, a lot of people joined in the last 5 minutes. So we have something called Slido. So if you go to a browser and just type in slido.com, and then the hashtag is all in one word, lowercase, food waste tech. If you want to ask a question, I'm watching as questions are coming in. I thank you for whoever submitted a question already, and I will be basically processing through Q&A through that mechanism. So just a heads up. Over to you, Victoria. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. I'm Victoria Rehkugler, Senior Customer Success Lead at Spoiler Alert, and I'm excited to talk to you today coming from more the manufacturer side and about how technology can take excess inventory to affordable food. So let me quickly talk about what Spoiler Alert is. Basically, we're a software platform that helps food manufacturers like the ones you see here, Kraft Heinz, Campbell's, Danone, more effectively sell through their excess inventory. That could be product that's out of season, had a packaging change, a flavor that wasn't popular, product that's starting to become short-dated, at the warehouse level. And using workflow automation and data and analytics, we help our customers sell that inventory to a network of discount retailers rather than throwing it away. And that results in more revenue and less waste and a stronger bottom line, which really resonates like Matt was talking about. It's really a win-win-win for everyone. It's a win for those manufacturers. They see 6 to 7 figure profit margin improvements. And then it's a win for the buyers because they have access to these CPG products and a broader array of items from pet care products to food to personal care. And then it's a win for the consumers where they have access at their local stores to get these products at a value. And the biggest benefit, of course, is for our planet, because this food is not becoming waste at that point where it would have, and not having those harmful effects. So since we all know that once food becomes waste, that's a problem, let's talk about one of the problems behind this problem, and it's general disconnects. And in this case, it's the disconnect between huge supply of excess inventory at CPG manufacturers and demand from communities and discount markets, people in need. And that's the disconnect that we're trying to solve. It's really a simple supply and demand equation. And the demand side is really big, huge. The pandemic, it was reported that 31% of people had their access to food decreased in some manner, and 78% of consumers are looking for some sort of discount. And really notable is that in March, the emergency SNAP assistance expired, which meant that $95 per individual per month was lost, and some families lost $250 a month for food. So they are really tightening their budgets and looking for affordable groceries. But people, so how do we resolve this disconnect with incredible demand on one side and massive waste on the other? Well, so first I would say that the discount retailers are recognizing the demand. People tightening their budgets are not without buying power. And that's why dollar stores are the fastest growing retailer in America. We see huge growth at companies like grocery outlet, discount retailers, TJ Maxx, Big Lots. And these stores continue to add locations and expand their product offering, more of those frozen and chilled sections to meet that need for affordable groceries. So meet this need, we need to make it easy to work through as many channels as possible to get food to its highest and best use. And so we do this streamlining of secondary sales, secondary market through our tool, and it moves inventory through these channels. We all know that there's nonprofits, community partners, they're critical outlets for excess food, but there's also this network, like I'm talking about, that we call the secondary market that people might not be as familiar with. I mentioned some of those stores that some people might have seen. So at Spoiler Alert, we work with this curated network. There's national chains, there's liquidators, resellers, discounters, there's even mom and pops that get access to this food and offer it to their communities. And CPG companies really value the role that these outlets play in their efforts to reduce excess inventory and get it somewhere. And so not only does it reduce food waste, but it, again, provides a broader array of affordable groceries to people in need. So, and as you can see here, there's a lot of benefits to be gained from utilizing the secondary market effectively, which is what we're striving to do with our software. They're able to move their excess inventory faster, and they gain data insights that let them be more intentional and strategic about the products that they're offering in these markets to get better value out of it, maximize the returns. And what's really exciting is to see how sometimes companies utilize their productivity gains, their cost and time savings to do programs, proactive programs, with other waste mitigation strategies, invest in other areas. We're proud to have a partner like HelloFresh that takes time to dedicate proactive philanthropy. They produce food directly to give fresh food to communities in need. That's separate from their efforts to, of course, utilize surplus. So many companies remain focused on that revenue, bottom line benefit, the ability to get things out of your warehouses because it's taking up space. And that's one of the big things that win people over to this technology. But there's also, and we want to have that kind of incentive. So a lot of things that have come up today and this week are incentivizing action that will reduce food waste. What is kind of surprising is that very few companies see this as part of their sustainability efforts. Like Matt was saying, it's really focused on the bottom line and revenue. And this is where I think we can do better. Surprisingly, that it's not a part of this, in spite of the fact that it's directly reducing food waste and getting food to people who need affordable food. So I just wanted to underline here that if we can make the case to connect these programs and invest in them, we can encourage more responsible discounting and liquidating while improving sustainability results. It really is amazing to see what partnerships between CPG manufacturers, discount channels, and technology can do. Just in 2022 alone, Spoiler Alert customers sold more than 325 million pounds of food. That was 25 million cases. That represents more than 270 million meals. But it's really just a drop in the bucket because there's this huge supply and demand issue, and I'm excited to see where we go from here. So thank you for listening to this idea that excess inventory management can be part of the solution.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Next up, we have Chris. We're going to talk more discounting. Too good to go. And for those of you who just came in the room, slido.com, #foodwastetech. Ask a question.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? Hey, there we go. Okay. First of all, it's great to be in this audience of people that are all so aligned around the problems that we're facing. I think what you'll probably hear from me is an attempt to coalesce a little bit of the messaging that you've already heard so far. I think struck by the message from this morning around moving past pilots, doing more, getting more people involved. And I think that I'm sort of struck by this paradox that we're facing potentially, which is that almost every global brand today has a sustainability initiative that has an agenda and a timeline and outcomes and measurables. And we have literally hundreds of people here bringing incredible solutions to the table to solve this problem across the full supply chain. And you would think that that would be enough in order to get the momentum going in the direction that we want. And yet, for some reason, I'm stuck on this paradox related to the fact that all of us want to do something good. And yet, when it comes down to making that decision, it's actually very, very challenging. And so I would just quickly, in preparation for this, I thought a little bit about my own journey. I have 2 kids, a daughter who's 15 and a son who's 17, and I think a lot about the world we're leaving them. But yet, I really wasn't actively doing anything to help the problem. And then I joined Too Good To Go, and a light bulb went off in the sense that we might need to start to change a little bit how we think about the problems that we're trying to solve. So I want to just definitionally say that I think that potentially the source of what we're struggling with here is that we see ourselves separate from nature. And because there's this space between us and the food that we eat and the environment that we live in, we then look at the problems that we're trying to solve as something that is in opposition to ourselves. So even this morning, and the phrase that's quite popular is that we're food waste warriors, or that we're going to solve this problem, we're going to fight against the change, or we're going to change someone's mind. And I think that the issue with that is that what we really need to be thinking about is actually owning the fact that we are the problem. So in that vein, then, I think the second part that I would say before I jump into what Too Good To Go is that when I think about technology, I think that humans are the most amazing expression of technology nature has ever created. So when I think about the definition of technology, it's not so much the code that we're writing, but it's also the ourselves and the way that we see the world. So with that in mind, then, Too Good To Go is the world's largest marketplace for surplus food. We work with, it's a super easy app to download. Uses your location, shows you food partners that are on the platform. You can make a purchase of a surprise bag, and it costs 1/3 of the retail price. So that means if I spend $5 in our app, I'm getting $15 worth of food in a surprise bag, and I go pick it up. We would humbly say we think we're doing a pretty good job. We're saving a meal every 3 seconds. And the problem with that is that means that we haven't figured out how to save the other 50,000 meals per second that are being wasted. So I think my personal journey with Too Good To Go is about the fact that our technology is about reducing the space between ourselves and the food that we're eating and producing, and then ultimately so much of the time getting thrown away. So in that way, our technology is looking to invite people under the tent. We really don't want to have a fight about food waste. We want to show people that wherever you are in this process, we want you to come along with us. So, in that sense, we envision a world without food waste, and we've got some fun, stats to demonstrate that we're making progress in the sense that we have 80 million users, 140,000 active food partners on the platform, with over 225 million meals saved, and over 1.5 billion products that have been saved by virtue of our date labeling product. That's great. I would also say, like in the US, we've saved 5 million meals, and so we have just a tremendous amount of opportunity ahead as it relates to how we think about solving this problem. So in terms of the reason that I want to define technology in terms of it being ourselves as well as the products that we're making, I want to talk about the values, because I think what Matt said is the most important learning so far. If only by talking about sustainability and what we're leaving for our children, we could actually change our actions. And yet, day over day over day, nobody changes anything. Even, I have kids, could I do more? Absolutely. And so when we think about how can we attack that problem in a way where we start to be inside of it and own it, I think some of the outcomes that we're seeing from partners that use our platforms really, really encouraging. So the first one is about employee engagement. 9 out of 10 employees that were recently surveyed said that they feel negative emotions when they have to throw food away. And when we have partners that implement our solution, we see a 10 to 15% increase in employee engagement. And so that's a really meaningful number. What that means potentially is that we're adding anywhere from 1 to 6 to more months of a teammate's tenure working in a food business. And you think about the reduction in cost and the reduction in turnover and the reduction in how much overhead headaches you have as a business, this is an incredibly powerful metric to think about as we deliver solutions that are really attacking food waste, but changing the way that the experience for users and for teammates working. So many of those teammates suffer from food insecurity that you can't imagine what it must feel like to, at the end of the day, scoop up all the food that could have been sold, put it in a trash bag, and take it out to a dumpster. So even if we're talking about one bag being sold, it has an amazing impact on that entire store, that entire grocery store, wherever it might be. The second one is on marketing value. So we've delivered almost 1 trillion marketing impressions inside our app for our partners. We just got a recent brand study done by Kantar, which was a very pleasant surprise, in which we learned that our brand is 3 times more favorable than the Kantar global standard. And so when you think about aligning a partnership and putting your brand logo inside of our app, you're getting a tremendous amount of marketing value that you'd happily pay for on any of the wonderful platforms that exist. And then that doesn't include the engagement when people click on the logo, when people decide to add, Safeway as a favorite. And we're effectively delivering almost $1 million a day back to partners in marketing value just by virtue of saving the food that they would have already thrown away. So when we think about how to sell this in and how to begin to deliver on the promise of what technology can do, we need to talk about the things that matter most to our partners. And the last one is really simplicity. So we think about simplicity. I mentioned that we have this marketplace. I think I'd love to tell you that the technology was groundbreaking, but it's pretty straightforward. But ultimately, one of the things that we've done as a team is focus on the technology solution being simple. It absolutely needs to be as easy as possible to implement. And in that way, we've created a mechanism for our store partners to easily add or reduce the number of bags that they're making available in real time, so that when we're bringing together consumers to partners, it becomes very, very seamless. Because we know that the best technology is that fades into the background when you use it and you forget that you were actually using a technical solution at all. So with that, I think I just would say that our opportunity then is to embrace the fact that for the technology solutions, including ourselves, to really drive home on the solution that we want, we got to talk to partners the way they want to be talked to. And we have to understand that leaning into the solutions that we provide is the way to scale. So we can't, rage against the machine, because we are the machine. But the best news about that is, from a technology perspective, it scales because we scale. So thank you very much.
This is Terry from MetaFoodX. Give him a moment. Quick note again, Slido, right? You guys got it? Slido, I know I'm repeating myself. Slido, hashtag food waste tech. I am watching. Upvote those questions. Over to you, Terry.
Thank you everybody for being here. My name is Thierry. I'm a VP Customer Solution for MetaFoodX. My background is not tech company. My background is food service. During my 20 years in US, I had the pleasure to work for Iowa State University, be director at USC, Berkeley, Santa Clara University with my friend from Compass. And today I'm here. What is MetaFoodX? We had a goal in MetaFoodX. It's to be sustainable and to help the operator. It's really easy for customers to go in any dining hall, any university, or Google campus, Lincoln campus, Cruise, etc., and to see all this food. But behind the scene, you have so many people working, from cook, from chef, who work with a lot of daily problems. Shortage of staff, shortage of inventory, supply chain issue, call sick, cost of labor, cost of food, etc., etc. And the base of the business for these people, especially for the chef, it's 90% guessing. Guessing what we will do today, how many customers will come, how many food do we need. Donc, I joined MetaFoodX because Dr. Gong, our founder, has this wonderful idea to use TA and to measure the consumption on every food pan set up on a buffet. I will try the clicker. Oh, first I want to say thank you to Sam, because Sam asked me to be speaker. I said, well, I don't like to speak. He said, Thierry, you'll be 10 people in the room. I say, okay. But good job, Sam. How does it work? That's me, that's it. Look, really, we try to work on increasing your sustainability, reduce food waste, energy waste, prevent unnecessary greenhouse gas emission, waste landfill, and help save our ecosystem. It's everybody's goal today, and we are very proud to be part of the little thing, not a big goal. We identify food waste trend and menu item, and decrease purchasing and inventory level. We increase employee morale by removing unneeded production and repetitive work. Good. What do MetaFoodX can help you, and what do? We measure consumption, we optimize operation, and we improve customer satisfaction. We measure consumption tracking, and production planning. On a real-time consumption tracking by portion, menu item, ingredient. Our food sensors stay out of the way. You cannot see them on a buffet. They are very small, very well integrated. It has no wire, nothing. It's like we are not here. That's a goal. We optimize menu, production, purchase planning, limit overproduction, prevent waste, save COGS, labor, and energy. We send kitchen alert in a kitchen. We cannot afford today to have a buffet and have people standing online and waiting a pan to be empty to refill. Donc we create this system when we monitor the pan. When the pan arrives at a level of 10 or 20%, it sends an alert in the back of the house, and the staff just have to go back in front, refill, and come back to work. Our production planning, we plan the future production based on actual consumption. Our service line leftover waste monitor your overproduction and provide guidance to adjust future production. With quality, quantity, and consistency is what you get with the consumption tracking. We display the allergy information. It limits the risk for your customer by creating a safe environment. And we avoid stations to running out and keep them fresh. We use real-time alert when to refill the station or refill the stale food. The base of the consumption tracking, the best what we are doing is to plan ahead. For give you a big picture, the majority of the food service work on a cycle menu. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4 big cycle menu. What do? We give a good snapshot of the chef, say, hey, Monday, week 1, lunch, this is your consumption. For your next cycle, Monday, week 1, lunch, we give you this tip on your production, plus 5 or 10% for get a little buffer, but don't overproduce. It helps the chef also to schedule, because he can see, based on the consumption tracking, the peak time for the client, the slow time, and it helps the purchasing planning, ordering ingredients based on customer usage, only order what you need, focus on labor, etc. Okay, I think I missed some page, but okay. That is our dashboard. The dashboard shows you different things based on station, day, time frame. You can see your total production, you can see your consumption, your overproduction, and your leftover. We try to define the difference between overproduction and leftover. If you produce 50 pounds of potato salad, but you use 30 pounds, doesn't mean you have 20 pounds waste. is something you can use. But your waste for buffet is all the food you keep on the line, on the end when you close. By code, you cannot use. So we try to teach the chef to be sure he understands the volume of food when he closes, based on picture we are taking, and he can teach the staff to reduce the volume of food before the closing on the line. Our menu management is very easy to use. You can create your cycle menu on 5 minutes. You can remove item on one day, add an item on a day. We try to keep the credibility for the chef and really to make the chef life easy. By experience, I know it's really difficult to be chef. And you cannot bring a new system to a chef and say, hey, gift for you. Enjoy. They will say, well, are you crazy or what? I have enough to do. I don't want to deal with that. Look, the way we are working, we are loading all the information for the chef. We do a 3-month pilot. We really manage the menus. They send us information. They send us the forecast. They send us the special. They send us an alert when they want to remove something. And we are managing everything for 3 months. The first goal is to show them if you reduce your production just based on what you need, you reduce your labor, you use your labor what you need, you get more free time. Not free time for do nothing, but free time for use our system first, but also for train your people, for be creative, for develop new recipe. It's creating new recipe, teaching people is the first beauty of the chef. Today, they don't have the time to do it. They do a job, they don't like what they do. I mean, the majority of chefs I know, sadly, they don't like it. It's not to be chef like it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's an overload of problem. Look, if what we are creating is helping the chef to be more happy and to be a chef again and not someone who is not coming for work, I will be very happy. That will be my first goal. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much.
I give you back here.
Oh, thank you. Let's put it on the podium. All right. Okay. So before we do anything, firstly, huge hand of applause for all of our speakers. And secondly, since I know it's a little stuffy in the room, I'm going to do the thing I did last year at the Refed Summit. So, for those of you who remember, everybody stand up. Stand up. Okay. So, I know this is going to be a little tricky. I know you're tired, and it's also like right after lunch. We're going to do the watermelon, which means that we're going to draw a watermelon with your arms if you can. And we're going to slice the watermelon in half. And we're going to give a slice to the person on your left. And then we're going to give a slice to the person on your right. Just watch out, don't kill anyone. All right, now we're going to sit back down. Okay, good. Any leftover watermelon out there? I'll take the leftover watermelon. Okay. All right, settle down, everyone. Settle down. Okay, thank you so much for all your questions. Again, lots of votes here, lots of creativity going on, I feel like. Okay, so I'm going to actually also toggle to our final slide here because if you need resources, oh, wait a minute. Can we toggle forward? Can you help me toggle forward to the very last slide at the very end where we have all the QR codes? Okay, we're going to stop there. Just in case you want to ask, upvote more questions or find out more, I would just take a photograph of this slide so you have it all in front of you. Okay, so most upvoted, we have literally like 30 votes for 2 questions, which I'm going to combine into one, because it actually is the question I was going to ask the panel if only 10 people showed up here today, is the following. So I'm going to combine, so according to Terry, apparently chefs already use many software solutions, so the average chef, at least at Google, has like 10 software systems they have to use, which is kind of crazy. How do we transition from one software platform that they might be already using to another one, which kind of touches upon changing behaviors and operational practices within companies you're partnering with? And then there was a big question that was upvoted a lot, which is, what do you think is the next software solution that companies need for food waste? And what is the problem that is still not being solved by the options that are already out there. So think about everything that is already out there and what is not already out there and what can tech do to solve for that. Anyone? Big question. Terry, go for it.
Hello. Yeah, I can take the first one. It's really not possible to ask a company to change the software, or you're very good sell guys. And I try in the past working for USC and UC Berkeley. It has 4 companies for food management in the market, and they do the same thing, but they try to sell what they do. Look, we try with one, and trying a new food management involves creating 5,000 recipes, 12,000 sub-recipes, etc., etc. Look, it takes time. And again, it's time you're taking from your chef to create this recipe. We fail after 5 years, donc we say, okay, let's try the other company. It's better. We try the other company, we fail. And after 12 years, I was in USC last weekend for my daughter's graduation. I talked with the director, with a friend. I said, well, where are you now? He said, well, we use at 50%. Doc, if you have a system which is working, keep it. It doesn't make change to change it. And the approach we have with MetaFoodX, we have a complete system on food management, but doesn't mean you have to use our complete system. If you're happy with your inventory system, keep it. If you're happy with your recipe, you don't want to change your recipe, you can keep it. You can use us for consumption tracking, for menu planning, for XYZ reason. And I think the new software company who are coming in the market need to provide the ability to the operator to keep what they have, but to add future. And not to come to say, well, what you're using is not working. Use us.
Matt, what do you think? Albertsons has some stuff going on behind the scenes already, so how are you integrating with them and others?
Yeah, so I think I agree with Thierry in that you want to try to get into some soft ground by doing some brand new stuff, but sometimes you do have to rip and replace things from the retailer. But it's, I think, very easy to say monolithically, use a fresh, don't use this other thing, but you get behind the scenes and it turns out there's a huge technology landscape. So specifically, there's a lot of systems that we plug into. So sales data, shipment data, pricing, all of that goes into our system. And so a grocer has an ERP, a big software vendor that manages their whole supply chain or other critical workflows and databases. So we didn't replace that. We didn't say we wanted to replace that because that's a whole mess. We sit on top of that. However, there was a part of that that they used for their center store ordering. This was to order Cheerios and Coke. And they were trying to use that on the fresh side of the business. And we said we had a better way in fresh. And so we were directly competitive with that and that vendor. And we had to prove it out. So I think on that side of the equation, we had to convince the executives to give us a try. And then we had to win over the hearts and minds of users to prove out the value. And then there's an ROI case to actually make it happen. So to synthesize that, I would say, pick your spot. Don't try to replace everything and build the design of your system to accommodate that strategy. But then where you do pick your spot, be aggressive and win.
Love it. Okay, second highest voted question actually goes to spoiler alert and Too Good To Go. Question is for the both of you, Victoria and Chris, how do you approach pitching secondary markets to brands that might worry about their brand perception and discounting? Ooh.
That's a great question and something that we have to overcome sometimes, and it depends on the company. Different companies have a different appetite for the outlets they can be seen in. It's what always is amazing to me is to hear about that they will allow it to be sold but not donated. That's always amazing to me, that to not being able to see their brands going to a nonprofit. So we've focused on really the advantage of building your brand's visibility more broadly. So one of the things that comes up is like substitutions and when there is competition. I mean, competition drives innovation and profits, and so companies, if they have a product that they're trying to capitalize where another company has a similar product. If they can get these consumers to want to like theirs, they get it at a discount, they see it at their discount retailer, and they decide they like that one, then they'll seek that one out and not their competitors, and they can get more market share. And if they don't take advantage of that, then they're just giving away sales. There's people who are looking for this in other retailers as well. And it's the opportunity to sell it there.
Chris?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think it's really about story, actually. So I would say, from our perspective, we're enabling a transaction and matching consumers with a seller of food. The price is happening on our platform, and so when you think about a brand that is making food available through Too Good To Go, you really are also helping them tell a story around sustainability. Now, that may not be the reason that they're doing it, but I think when you contextualize that for consumers, it becomes a much more powerful and palatable solution. So, it's different than the context of being in the store and seeing a markdown sticker, which I think is the separation there is actually quite beneficial as it relates to how we think about the dynamic related to the value for consumers.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, next question up for Fresh specifically. How are you measuring prevention, and how and when do you shift your baseline for measurement?
It's a great question. This is actually a very good question. It's very easy in the first year, although we still take a very technical approach. So to be a little bit nerdy about it, we start usually in a pilot, and then we also measure as we roll out. That enables us to say, here's a fresh cohort of stores, and how does that compare to a non-Afresh control group of stores? We then look at the performance for Afresh year over year or on a trailing basis, and then look at the performance of the control group year over year or on a trailing basis. And you can say, hey, Afresh, the waste went down from 6% to 4%, and for the control group, it went down from 6% to 5.5%. And then we compare the difference of differences, it's called. So we drove 2% reduction versus 0.5% reduction, and that gives us, and we do it on a statistically significant enough, large enough sample size to prove that it was not randomness that drove this effect, but our intervention that drove the effect. So that's really easy on year one. It's a very robust statistical measure of our impact, and grocers ask that of us because they pay us a lot of money, so they want to make sure that we're actually saving them a lot of money. On the how do we prove it out over the longer term, that is a really tricky question, because at a certain point, we're just in all the stores. So right now within Albertsons, we're live in 2,200 stores. With our other partners, we're live chain-wide. So there is no longer a control group. So we compare ourselves to what had happened prior to Afresh. So we have historical metrics of measures of performance. And then we also look at other measures of the efficacy of our system, which would be, are the shelves full while the back room is empty before the next truck comes in, and other internal measures of forecast accuracy and internal effectiveness that help us compare the consistency of our delivery over time.
All right, this one is a really interesting one. Okay, ready? Without surplus grocery food available for donation, what happens to the emergency food relief nonprofits that rely on these avenues for hungry families? Anyone? I'll take it too if this is too much. Okay, so the question is, if, for example, Afresh, you're able to help all of your partners reduce their food waste and surplus significantly available for donation, then what happens to the nonprofits who rely on these donations? John, do you want to come up? No.
From Albertson's point of view, and I'll just say this, and it's sincere, we're always going to have food waste. We have Afresh. We have two other AIs that are trying to keep us from over-ordering and overproducing, and they're proprietary. We have all kinds of food. We have all kinds of programs going. It's not enough. That's why we're here. We will always have food to donate. That's a misconception. And why is that? Because Afresh knows the inventory control from the history, but they may not know that We have a high school graduation this Saturday. And so our produce manager knows that, so they generate more. It goes through, but then we may have more excess. So you don't cover everything. So you can erase that. Stores are always going to have food to donate. And it doesn't mean we don't care or that we're inefficient. It's the nature of the beast. Thanks.
Thank you, John. All right. Does someone else want to take a stab? Victoria?
Well, yes, I can just add that that's the case for manufacturers as well. We're working in this unique space, and like I talked about, where it's the timing of this product that's short dated, but that there's demand in the secondary market, and they're using the data to understand where they can get the most value out of that. But then there's a point where they realize, oh, we know there's no demand for this in this secondary market, or they're not going to pay what we need them to pay to make this worthwhile. And we work within that, and then that helps those salespeople identify, okay, well, I need to get this inventory out. They tell the warehouse that this can go to donation, and so these things happen in conjunction. There's always that inventory to be able to donate as well.
I would love Thierry to respond to this question as well. As someone who has run food service operations for decades, are you ever going to end up with no food to donate?
No, because a lot of factors. I mean, you have a new ceremony on campus. You have. I have to say something. When I work on a project, someone I met not a long time ago, but now I've considered like friends, said, Thierry, you forget something. I say, okay. So when you do your forecast, you need to add an option. I say, okay, what do I need to add? The weather. And I say, oh, that's great. I say, can you log your forecast to the weather forecast? Like that's when we forecast the menu for next week or the following week, we will know if it's hot, raining, cold, and that will change the fluctuation. I think the same thing in a grocery store. And no, I mean, unfortunately, I will say regret if he has zero food, maybe food hunger will not be a problem because Albertson or any company will make more profit, we hire more people, and we have less people, we need food. It's a domino effect. But unfortunately, no, I don't think we can arrive to zero food waste. It's just not possible. There's too many things nobody can control.
I'll add a little color to that. I think that's a question that I grapple with as well, right? I know that the food recovery organizations and the hunger relief organizations rely on grocery and restaurant to provide the mix, right? We talk about not just food security, but nutritional security. Our friends at Tufts taught us that. At the end of the day, our goal is not necessarily to eliminate donations, but to get more of the food that we're currently dumping in compost donated. But it's easy to compost something because the compost bin doesn't yell at me, right? And it's right there, right? But to donate something takes me a few more steps. I might have to stick around to wait for somebody to come pick it up, right? So the current option, is to mainly in Google's kitchens to compost, right? And so I don't think we're going to run out of surplus food. How do we make donation as an option as easy as putting something in the compost bin? Wow. I'm your moderator. I'm not even your panelist.
Emily, can I add two
Please,
more
go
things
ahead.
on this? So agree with everything that everybody said. I think two more nuances, just to quantify a little bit of what you were saying. I think the statistic I saw was that actually only 10% of wasted food in grocery is donated. The majority of donations to food banks come from the growers, actually. And that makes sense because that's where supply is more aggregated. If you think about the waste manifests as at the grocery store, it's a really diverse set of a few apples here, a few bananas there. It's really difficult to aggregate that. And if you've ever packed a bag at a food bank, or if you have, generally it's much easier if you have a big supply of doing that. So that's one dimension. The second thing I'll just call out is that what's our goal? This also builds off of what Emily is saying. And from my perspective, population is growing to 9-10 billion people. The amount of arable land that we have on the earth is fixed. We're literally burning down the rainforest to make enough room to grow cattle. The goal has to be to make the food that we grow now go further in addition to feeding those that are most in need, and that's going to mean becoming more efficient with our food system. So even if the waste is going away in that dimension, it'll allow us to lower prices and to hopefully better feed the world as it grows, and make use of our resources.
Okay. All right. You know, Chris, you've been a little quiet, so I'm going to put 2 questions in front of you that all got upvoted. Number 1 is, how are you calculating meals saved? Over 90% of what I see in the app where I live, at least, is exclusively for baked goods, not meals specifically. So a meal is more than just one food item. And then the second one is, why sell surprise bags instead of allowing users to select the exact meal that they'd like to eat?
Right, well, the second one is because then that's called ordering off the menu. And we would love to do that, except that we can't forecast what waste is going to be available at the end of the day. So I think, functionally speaking, we'd love to be able to itemize everything in the bag, but that ultimately that's actually a heavy ask from the partners. And so what we're trying to do then is really make it as easy as possible and frictionless as possible for partners to sign up and make and divert what was going in the trash into something of value. So I think hopefully that makes sense. I think on the meal, the surprise bags and meals saved, essentially we are using a proxy based on weight. So we're using, I think it's like 1.5 kilograms is representative of a meal. And so we know based on the data that we get on the bags and what goes into those bags, in spite of the fact that if I go to a bagel shop and I spend $5, I get 16 bagels that last me, well, let's just say 16.
I'll eat 16 bagels for dinner.
I was going to say,
I'm
like,
good
maybe
with
I
that.
shouldn't say how fast I'd eat that, but that weight, we're actually underestimating the amount of food that we're saving based on a meal. So we're calling it a meal because it's a little bit easier to understand, but it's essentially like it is based on the food type and the weight in the bag.
All right.
I have one other thing to say
Please,
about the
you
previous
can say whatever you
conversation.
like.
Whoa. I think I just would try to connect some of the things you're talking about in terms of the next technology product as well as eliminating full food waste is simply, I think that's where the big opportunities lie. On the earlier panel, I think, there was a bunch of talk about logistics, right? And I think that's a huge opportunity. And you talk about open protocols as it relates to connecting the food waste and the consumption, whether it's through food banks, donations, or consumers, and that opportunity is to start to connect those dots more explicitly through some combination of open protocols but ultimately through partnership. Because I think there's probably like plenty of solutions out there. And so it's really about starting to combine and partner where we can fill the gaps and lean into how we make that connection so that, shrink comes down ideally to a much smaller number, but it's never going to go to zero, and that we get super efficient about how to manage it.
I love it. I know Suzanne's not here, but John, on your behalf, I know Suzanne on the main stage this morning talked about stitching everything together. Right? How could we stitch everything together more effectively as the software solution? Okay, so we're down to our last couple of minutes, and I would love to close out and give all of our panelists a chance to leave maybe one key takeaway or call to action. What would that be if you want to leave this audience with one thing? Let's start with you, Matt.
I would say, I think the one thing I would say is just to be thoughtful about how a solution is going to get adopted. If you're inspired to build something, if you were the person that asked the question about what's the next software solution, I would encourage you to go into a grocery store or go into a DC or to call a buyer or to talk to somebody who's actually trucking or shipping the food and ask them what their biggest pain point is. Like, that is a clue. When we started the company, we talked to produce managers and we saw the paper order guides they were using, and we tried to be as empathetic as possible to their needs. And if you start just scratching an itch in that way, it can really uncover a path that could have a ton of value. So I would start really small and talk to the people who are actually driving the hard work in the industry.
Chris? Yeah. Let's clap.
No pressure. I think mine is maybe much more simple, which is just that, I talked about it. I think that thinking about the problem as something that is adversarial at all is completely counterproductive. So, I think we just, when I go out to dinner with my friends, right, there's a part of me that wants to be like, guys, like, seriously, we're going to eat that. we're not leaving anything on the table. We're going to take that with us. But I think that the trick with that is how do you start to implement change in your daily life in a way that invites others to join you, as opposed to making them feel either dumb, ashamed, not caring. It's much easier to do that, right? I just probably did that in that last question when I was like, well, we call that ordering off the menu. Like, I'm not trying to insult. I think the idea is we want people to be a part of this. This should be the biggest tent around. Like, food and sharing food is the most amazing thing to do. And it brings people together, and it makes like incredible memories. And yet it is also the source of one of the greatest pains that we're suffering from. And so I would say, like, my takeaway is, like, let's try to be like open and welcoming as much as possible.
Amazing. Victoria.
Sure. Well, I would say in general, what we're doing here, we are seizing the opportunity to use technology when it makes sense, when it makes us more effective. So we should all just seize those opportunities and keep an open mind to new approaches and new connections that we might not have thought of before, even if they do take a little extra work, but it's worth it, Just keep an open mind there.
Thierry?
Like we talk, I don't think we'll be able to save 100% of the food waste. But the only thing behind for me, it's what we can do is good. Let's do more. And thank you to everybody here. Thank you for REFED. Thank you for REFED board. And we need more organization. We need more people to come to the same cause. And we know the problem. We just need to work on and continue to work hard. And thank you to my panelists here. It's great. It's great for me to be here. It's great to see what we are doing and what everybody is doing. And let's continue the fight.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Time's up, apparently. But yes, huge round of applause for our panelists and Sam Buck, who arranged all of this.